All right, today we're talking about ES modules, importing, exporting them, what modules are, how they work, how we can fit them together, but not just for the browser, also for Node.js. So we'll talk a little bit about the differences between using modules in browser, using modules in Node.js, and the slight syntactical differences and a couple of the gotchas. So I have a web page here, and what I want to do is bring this script in. My script is this simple function. I call it, I pass in a string, and it says hello, and then whatever string comes after that. That's all that it does. And if we look over here, there's the result. Okay, so pretty straightforward, pretty simple. What I want to do is I want to have some utility functions. So I've got another file here, utils.js. I'm going to write some functions and have them inside of here so that I can import them into this script and then use that functionality here. And then maybe this is a file that I want to keep using on other projects so I can repeat using it across multiple projects. So how do we do that? Well, the first step, we're going to say import and then the name of the function from and then the name of the file. Now, it's important to note that when you are doing the import, you have to start with this path. If you're doing something with Node and you've got Node modules, so you've got a project and you've imported a Node module into the project, it's defined in your package.json. If you leave this off and you're running your script through Node.js, it's going to know, oh, okay, you want the thing that's called utils. So it's going to look inside of Node modules for something called utils. In the browser, we're going to be specific. We have to give the full file name, and we're going to say, starting in my current folder, this is where you're going to locate it. Now, if it was in a different folder, I'd put that path, but this is the import command to bring it in. Now, I've left out a key part right here is, what is the thing that you're importing? All right, jump over to the utils. I'm going to write a couple of functions here. So we'll do one I'm going to call flip. We'll start with just one. I'm going to take a string, and then I'm going to return that string sort of flipped. The characters all changed in order. So we'll split it, which turns it into an array. Splitting it on an empty string means we get the whole thing. Then now it's an array. We reverse the whole array and then join it back together with an empty string again. So we take the whole string, flip its order, and then stick all the characters back together. All right, that's the function right now that I have in utils that I want to bring into the other file. I can do this. I can say export const flip. Okay, this is bare minimum. So I'm exporting something that's going to be called flip over here. Now, when I import, I'm getting this whole thing. So I'm getting the module. It's going to be like one big object. And inside that object, there's something called flip. Now that I have that, we can come here and use this. Now, for those of you watching over to the right there, you'll see that an error did appear. So it's complaining about my line 3, about my import. And the reason for that is, in the browser, if you're going to start doing this, if you're going to import one file into another, so this now becomes a module object that I'm importing. If I do that, in the HTML, when you load your original script, you have to add type equals module. Save that. My error message went away. And look, it worked. It flipped the order of the characters and wrote this out. So my script is actually working. Because I said type equals module in my HTML, this is now a module. Because it's a module, it's allowed to import this module. Now, another way of exporting, we can say export default. Now, you can only have one default thing. Sorry, we don't want to put it right there. We can come down here to the bottom and say export default flip. This is the thing that I'm exporting. When you say default, there's only one thing that you're going to be exporting from the file. This is the default. So when somebody imports this, you can see I got an error again. when somebody imports it, it's no longer an object with something inside of it called flip. Flip now is the thing that we're importing because we said that's the default. And there we go. My error, once I save this, is gone. So we're good. Once again, this is running. So if we say default, then the import doesn't get the curly braces around it. If we don't have the word default, if we're just exporting something, then now we need to put curly braces around this to say, this is the object that I'm exporting, and this is a property inside of it, the same way we would do the import over here. Import the object, the module. Inside of it, you have this thing called flip. Now, if we have two things, let's say that there is another function. So we'll call this one up. I'm just going to convert a string to uppercase. This is one of my utilities. We return s to locale uppercase. There we go. That's all my function does. Now, right now, you can see it's a little bit grayed out compared to this one. So I've declared it, but I'm not using it. It's not part of my export. This function right here could call it. We could say that. We're going to call it from here. Now it's being used, and that's absolutely fine. We don't have to export it. It's just that this function is using it. So this function still has access to absolutely everything that is inside this file. It's just outside, back over in here, the only thing that this file has access to is whatever objects we're listing here. So this is my function called flip. But if I save this, now when we run this, you can see it did convert it to uppercase. So that part was working. If we want both to come out, we have to explicitly export both of them. Let's comment this out so they are separate functions once again. So we're going to export both things. Back over here, I would do this again. I would say flip up, both of them being exported, and then wrap this call inside of this one, and we're back to having the uppercase reversed. Okay, so we've got one or more things being imported, one or more things being exported. If your file is bringing in something as a default and then other things, you can do that as well, but very rare that you would want to do that. If you want to rename any of these, that is something that is more common. So I have here flip. Let's say in this file I don't want to call flip. I'm going to use a different name. Maybe I'm using that name for something else. So I will say flip as flipper. Flipper is now the name that I will use inside this file to refer to that other function. So this is the name that I'm now using inside this file, and it avoids any naming conflicts. So I'm bringing this from utils.js. I'm going to rename it as flipper, and that's how I will reference it. There we are, working. Okay, so that's in the browser. Remember, type equals module, and we can do this. So we know right now that this code works. This imports this stuff, and it runs. This, we're fine. We're doing the export. We're not doing the default. We're just bringing out two things. I'm going to open up my console now, and I'm going to run this as if I'm just in Node. So I'm no longer using index.html. This is my primary file, and it's going to load this one. So let's try that out. So node app.js. I get an error. So what is the error that we're getting? Cannot use import statement outside of a module. Okay, in the browser we solved that by saying type equals module. But in Node, I do not have an HTML file to do that. So the way we do it, simply enough, we come in here and we just rename these files to have an extension that is MJS instead of just JS. So module.js. So MJS, these are both renamed. Now just come over here and I'll change this to utils.mjs. I save that. And well, here, let's clear this off. So I'm running app.mjs, and there we are. Now it works. So all the other rules still apply. We've got the file name. It's not something from Node modules, so therefore we're going to do this. We're going to start with the file path saying, starting from the current directory, this is the path to get to it. Here's the file extension for what we want. If it was something that we installed, so let's do an npm init defaults. Okay, I now have my package.json file is inside of here. I can, here, let me expand this a little bit. There we go. I'm going to do an npm install of node fetch. Let's say I want to use node fetch. This creates the node modules folder. Inside of here, I'm going to have node fetch along with its dependencies, but it exists here inside of node modules. Now, if I want to bring that into my file, I'm MJS, I'm fine to do any sort of import that I want. I'm going to import something called fetch from node fetch. And here, I'm not giving the file path. I could say from here, go into the folder node modules and then look for node fetch. Inside of node fetch, we've got the package.json, which defines the main script, and it's going to tell us where that file is located. But we really just need to do this. Node is going to do the rest of the work for us to locate this. Let's clear this off and run it one more time. Actually, I'm glad that I did this mistake. This is what I was talking about earlier, where if you do the export default, it's not the module with the thing inside. Fetch is actually the thing that's being exported. So we will get rid of the curly braces around this. Fetch, that is the thing that we're bringing in. Clear, we'll run it one more time. And there we go. Now it works. The import is functioning because this, inside of this module, fetch is the default. So with fetch as the default, we don't need the curly braces around it. Okay. And that's it. That is Node modules, or ES modules, sorry. ES modules being used in both Node and in the browser. So I hope that clears up any questions you have about that. If you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments down below. And as always, thanks for watching.